without further ado, Dean Logan is here. He's CEO of Foundation. He's got, what, 12, 15 years creative management experience?
Yeah, a little more, over, about 15 years management.
Okay. So everything from alpha marketing on up to where he currently is at Foundation. So you're going to get a wealth of knowledge and ability to understand the creative mind, maybe, and as well as how to manage that and harness that talent for your maximum effect. So without further ado, here is Dean Logan.
Thanks, folks. I'm going to have to step over here from time to time. I had the tech working up there at the slider, but with all presentations, it's not working now, but that's okay. Thank you guys for coming out so very much. I appreciate you on this nice, balmy North Carolina evening. And anyone watching a la Periscope, hi to you too. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. So, yeah, I have managed and hired and worked with creative professionals for about 15 years. I've been in the business for close to 25 years. I'm dating myself a bit there. So I feel like I can talk pretty well about the creative individual and the business to you all tonight. What this is not going to be is strictly me talking as a creative to another creative, because I know some of you probably are not working creative. So show of hands, how many of you would call yourselves working creatives? You're a writer or a developer or something. Okay, how many of you all manage a team of creatives? Okay, how many would say that you're not a creative, but you're just here because you're curious? Okay, wow, good mix of people here tonight. Another thing this isn't going to be is a primer on millennials. There's enough out there about millennials. Yes, there are creative millennials, but there are creatives of all ages. So this isn't about that. And I'm going to try to make this not specifically a serious management talk either. This is going to be from my experience of working with individuals over the years, the good and the bad and the ugly. I'll try to share a few stories, some anecdotes for you. And with that, we'll just jump in. Our hashtag tonight, hashtag TMC tonight, right? So for our talk, creatives, as I mentioned earlier, how I'm going to define this, these are individuals who earn a paycheck by making stuff. You're designing stuff, you're art directing stuff, you're copywriting stuff, and you're earning a paycheck from it. That's very different than if you do it as a hobby or if you like doing it for friends and things like that, or a photographer for that matter. So for the purpose of the talk, that's going to be the definition. So is it really that hard to manage creative people? You know, a lot has been written about it, and the trials and tribulations, the creative team, and the creatives are giving us trouble and all that. Is it really that tough? And the answer is, no, it's not. But organizations can make it that way. One of the ways I see a lot of organizations do that is that they have someone managing a creative team, but they don't have a creative background. Now, I think we've all had this boss at one time or another. Right, yeah. And there's nothing more frustrating than having a boss that doesn't get you on some level, who doesn't understand what it was like or what it's like in your day to day. So unless you've worked as a creative, it's kind of hard to relate to a creative. It just is. And keep in mind, not everything I'm going to say tonight is correct. Half of what I say may be wrong, because every manager is different, every creative team is different, every culture, in-house team, agency is different. So what worked for me in one way may not work for you. So that's my little disclaimer there. But it does help to know creatives on that level. And it's no coincidence that some of the most successful agencies of the past 20 years all have had creatives at their helms. These are just some of them. So with that, some insights into creatives, and I'm sorry I keep using that like it's like millennials, but I'm going to switch it here in a minute. There is no shortage of stereotypes for what we think of as creatives. Our pop culture, our history, our personal experiences or stories from friends all feed us these ideas of what creatives are supposed to be or what they're like or to work with. Now, like any stereotype, there's grains of truth in all of these. Well, here especially, Dolly, I don't know if this is a true story, but it's a good story. As the story goes, Dolly was having his final student exhibition in front of his classmates and his instructor. He waited for everyone to assemble, and then he picked all his stuff up off the wall, off the floor, and he said, "You're not worthy to judge me," and he walks out. I don't know if that's true or not, but it would go with the stereotype of the, my way or the highway creative. So there's a little bit of that in these stereotypes. So here's what it gets down to. What we do as creatives. And there's the switch, we. So now I'm going to talk about myself sort of in first person. I was a working graphic designer and art director coming up through agency world, a production person at first too. And then senior AD, ACD, and then CD, working with people. What we do is we create stuff for a paycheck. Why we do it is because we have this fanatical need to express ourselves in very different ways than most people. We have to get things out of it. It's in our heart. It's here in our soul. It doesn't come from a place of we want to do this as a profession. We do, but chances are most people, not all, but most people who are working creatives, this started a long, long time ago. This started in grade school, and I was talking to a student earlier, and I said, yeah, I was one of the kids who lived to draw pictures. What kid doesn't? But I never grew out of that phase of it. Now, when I say draw pictures, I'm generalizing because that's my view, but I'm also talking about writers and photographers and things like that. So don't try to get too boxed in by my language. And here's the kicker. This is why. It is almost impossible for us to separate the what from the why. We can't go in and clock in and do our thing, the cartoon with the dog and the fox. We can't go in, "Morning, Fred," and clock out and then leave it all behind. We're too intrinsically connected to that thing that we're producing. So I know everyone's seen this or a version of this. Well, creative people, we work on that side of the brain, but we also have this side of the brain. Truth is, in the world of a creative person, we experience things like this. This is how things look to us. This is how our day-to-day lives, our relationships, all these things that make up who we are. We are absolutely right brain dominant, yes, but that left brain, man, it has a hard time getting out sometimes. It really does. So when we're at the job and we're creating this, most people see this. The client sees this. The account management team sees this. In part, the creative director sees this. Everyone sees. Your mom and your dad see this, right? If they can understand what you do. Everyone sees this, but to the person who made it, to the man or woman who created this thing, it's not that, it's this. It feels like that to us. Right or wrong? Now, I'm not defending the creative persona here. I'm not encouraging the behavior that's characterized by those earlier stereotypes I'm showing you. As creatives, it's incumbent upon us to not play into those stereotypes. It's hard for us because that's how our work feels to us in here. And when it's criticized or someone wants to change it or do a color or something like that, our initial reaction right off the bat before we even know it is this. Right? We want to defend that thing. No. Step back. Stay away. That's my baby there. You don't mess with that, for the love of God. Client wants the logo bigger. Okay, we've all heard that one. So that's why we get the rap we do sometimes. Now, showing this, yeah, it's a dramatization, but it's incumbent upon us as creatives to mature past this and not become those stereotypes. We have to learn to, okay, the client wants this for a reason. Account management thinks that's not right for a reason. My boss doesn't like it for a reason. And as creatives, we have to learn to move past this gut reaction of ours, and it's there. Hell, it happens to me too sometimes. I don't show it like this. Now I shouldn't show it like this, right? But I have to learn to, okay, let's find a way to find out what the client is really after. And you get that as you go through the profession and you mature and you get experience. So with that, I'll go into some more of the practical things here. Hiring creatives. Now, once upon a time when I was coming up through the ranks, your book was king. Your portfolio was everything. Nothing else mattered. The book matters. Didn't matter what kind of person you were, any of that. The book mattered. These days, or at least from my perspective, that's not true anymore. For me, I think a successful creative is a good mix of talent, yeah. The book needs to be there, but personality too. Will people want to work with this person? Because chances are most of you are either going to be on or managing a small team of people. Unless you go to a big agency, a Y&R and an Ogilvy like that, your team is going to be less than 10, 12, 8 people, something like that. It's going to be a small group. So what you're really hiring into is not necessarily just a book, but something more important. And that's the culture of the organization that you have. If it's the agency, if it's an in-house team, it is going to inherently grow and create its own culture. And that's very, very important, especially when you get with smaller teams. With a big agency, yeah, they have their cultures, but all of us, mostly, we're going to be with a small group. So you need to think about that when you're hiring a person for that. The environment, how people get along, the day-to-day, what's the vibe like? That's very important because, and I'm not going to go off on a screed on culture here, but good culture breeds creativity. We all know that, even in a non-creative environment. If it's a good culture, people want to produce and they want to take risks. So there's a 50% chance, and you have to be careful when you hire, there's a 50% chance that junior desire you hire in could turn into a rock star, given the right environment and given the right encouragement and training. On the other hand, you hire a jerk, there's a damn good chance that the only thing they'll become later on is a bigger jerk. And you don't want that. For me, when I look at a hire, I'm not in a hiring place right now, but when I was a creative director, I looked for these things. I looked for portfolio first, yeah, talent. And if you're, this deck will be on SlideShare tomorrow morning, so don't feel like you got to write stuff down or any of that stuff. It'll be there. Attitude, and the attitude will come through in their emails that they send you, the way they talk on the phone when you first speak to them. You'll get a sense of what kind of person they are. The interview tells a lot. You'll be able to pick up pretty quick whether someone's a good fit or not. I was at in an interview, a team of us were interviewing a person for a fairly senior position. And this person was in there and presenting. It was myself and two other women, both of which who had blonde hair. So this person, he's talking. So he was talking, and no filter. He goes, yeah, I kind of messed up on that part, but I'm not a dumb blonde. He said that and didn't even faze him. Of course, I was okay. Yeah. But the interview is very important too, because the body language, what they wear, and again, I'm not going to go into all that. There's a lot of stuff out there of how to do the interview, but the interview will tell you a lot. It'll tell you if they're going to be a good cultural fit, and then the resume. Frankly, I don't look at the resume too hard, and I know that's sort of anthematic to what you hear and read a lot. And the resume's got to be everything, but in this business, your talent and your attitude are the things that are going to get you hired. And that may just be my bias, because I'm a shitty speller, so I don't look for typos and things like that on resumes, but portfolio and attitude. And when you meet these people and you talk to them and you put all these things together, your gut will tell you if this person is a good fit or not. So at the end of all of this, listen to that spidey sense. I have heard before, something was bugging me, but we hired that person anyway. Something was nagging me about that candidate, but the book was good. The book was really, really good, so we went ahead and hired. And then later, you've got a bad situation on your hands. So, managing. You've got this group of superpowered individuals. You've got your Justice League. I'm a DC guy. I just like DC better than Marvel. How do you corral that team? How do you make things happen? And again, this isn't a managerial primer. These are some things more aimed at the creative people. Well, you need to understand our motivations. What makes us tick? I gave you the big one earlier. That's the big thing that it's just damn near impossible for us to separate our work from our craft, from our heart, because when we do that little thing, it's our heart and soul that's up there. But to go a little deeper, we have these things. We have a need for the expression. We want to be recognized for our talent. We do. We want someone to look at something and look at some of our work and go, man, that is cool. Did you do that? That's great. We like that. We need that as a species of sorts. And we have a desire to be unique. We don't like fitting in, and we find our own ways to do that. And it goes back, again, to Mom putting the picture you drew at school that day up on the fridge with a SpongeBob magnet. Man, we love that. That's just kind of how we're wired. And it does make us a little challenging to work with sometimes. We can be bits and pieces of those stereotypes that you saw. We can be moody. We can be a little insecure. We're kind of an insecure bunch by nature because of those things. We want our stuff to be seen, and we want people to like the thing that we create that comes from our hearts. Oddly enough, one of the things that isn't a big motivator for us, really, is money. Now, yes, everyone wants a good paying job. Everyone wants to be well compensated for what they do. Sherry, out! How dare you! Yeah. Right.
You don't care about money?
But if you ask a creative, would you rather have a really well-paying gig where you're doing crappy soul-sucking work, or maybe a job that's paying maybe even less than standard, but you love the work and it's making your book shine? 10 times out of 10, that creative will take this one. They will take a pass on the money, and they will go for where the work is, and that's the good work, the work that makes them feel like they're making a difference or it means something to them. And that's just how we're wired. So, some tips on managing creatives, managing people like me and like some of you out there. First and foremost, give feedback. Gosh, we want to know, we have to know, we thrive on this. When we don't get feedback, we get weird and we get moody. If our stuff's bad, we want to hear it. We want to hear it in a good way, but we want feedback. If you're managing us, we want to know that the client likes something, or wow, that's really good, or we need to tweak here. Find one good thing. Michael Winslow, who's a Hall of Famer creative here in the Triangle, I was lucky enough to work for him, and he's one of my mentors. This was his point that he gave me. He said, find one good thing when you're reviewing work, which is to say, one of your people comes to you with a logo. Here's an idea for a logo, and it's like really bad, and this will happen sometimes. Find something. Is it a color? You know, that color's pretty good. I like what you did with the color there. We might need to think the fonts and the words and the placement and the balance and the white space, but I love the color that you had. Let's find that one good thing, because that helps us a lot. Give context for next steps. When I see a creative who is struggling with a concept or direction, trying to get to someplace, I will say, well, I love what you did with the color, but go look at this. Go look at the works of M.C. Escher. Go read the long copy ads of Neil French. Go look at the old Funny or Die video of The Landlord. Right? Remember that one? The baby, the foul-talking baby? Yeah, well, it could be a TV commercial or a video. So much happens on video these days. That's a reference too. So I always try to give context for something. If I see them trying to strive for an idea or they want to get to some place, I send them in directions where visually or verbally they will absorb things and they'll go, hey, that's cool. That could be, and then you see the gears turning. Provide account rationale. Now, this is a way of saying, okay, the client really doesn't like blue because the last marketing manager they had used a lot of blue. We can't use blue. It's not it's not rationale necessary, but it's things that we need to know. Let us know about the business side of it. We can't quite do this because the budget is going to, hold us back on something like that. We do want to know these things, but understand too, we don't want to know that much about it. Now, I don't mean for this to be insulting, but the truth is we're just not that into the metrics and the measurements and the numbers of the profession we've chosen. Yes, those things mean a lot to us, and yes, we do understand that they impact our paycheck and our well-being greatly. But in our heart of hearts, this is not a big thing for us. We don't focus on it. Here's a big one. I have seen this more times than I can count. For the love of, don't encourage the stereotypes. It's so easy to do, to poke fun at the client. Client's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking. Or the suits, right? That's what account management. That was the slang for them. They don't know. If they would know creativity, if it came up and bit them on the ass. Don't worry what AEs say. And I've had, managers do these things sometimes. Don't buy into this. AEs are your best friends, creative folk. You don't want their job, I promise you, because they have to deal with the client and you. All right? And the client does know what the hell they're talking about. They may not be able to express it like you or I can because they don't have that language, they don't understand it. but don't start bad-mouthing the client, because if you're a manager and you start poking a little fun at the client, I've been guilty of it. I'll admit it. I'm past that now. But if you start poking fun at it, before you know it, your staff will start doing it, and then other people are doing it, and before you know it, an email goes to the client that was meant for an internal audience with some disparaging comment, and then the president's getting a phone call. It happens. You're being watched if you're managing. Now, this goes for any management team, but especially with creatives, because of our nature to, we want your approval, boss. We really do. So we're watching you. Every step you take, every vow you break, they'll be watching you. So the things that you say, the decisions you make, all of that stuff, on duty and off. It's not fair, but that's how it rolls. When you're managing people and you're hanging out at a bar and they show up at that same bar, you're on. You're their boss. Be really careful handing out titles. If you promote a person to a role or a title that they're not ready for, it can have a lot of bad consequences. In the short term, it's good. Maybe you gave this person a new title because you couldn't afford to give them a really good raise. So you bump them from here to here. That's good. The person feels great about themselves, and they tell all their friends and their parents, man, I just got this new title, it's awesome. And new business card and all that kind of stuff. But unless this person is ready for that title, it can hurt their career in a number of ways. First, if they decide to go to another place and they've got this new title, chances are they won't have the portfolio to back it up. Now they're out of whack with the rest of the industry. Now they're going to be looking at roles and hiring people, creative directors or hiring managers are going to be looking at that person going, what the hell's his title like that for? He didn't have the book for that. Why does she have that title? She's only been in this business, 6 years. So be very careful when you hand out titles. If someone's earned it and they're ready for it and they can take on the responsibility of it, absolutely give it to them. But don't do it as a patch because you couldn't give them something else or they've been around for a very, very long time. Tenure is no excuse to give someone new rank because they may not be right for that role. They may not be ready for it. Resolve disputes. When you've got a tight-knit bunch of slightly insecure, very eclectic personalities together and things start going sour, they can go sour fast, really fast. So when you get wind of a little skirmish or something like that, knock it out. Take care of it then. Do it that day. Don't wait for it to blow over. Don't think it'll solve itself. It might, but don't wait around for it. It'll be better if you just address it then and there. Yeah. Can I get an amen? Yes. Some organizations suffer from this. They want to have meeting after meeting after meeting, and as creatives, we'll phone it in some of those meetings. When the meetings get to be too much, I've seen creatives that are doodling, while someone's talking about whatever it is. And this goes for any organization. If you can, what's the rule? Instead of having a half-hour meeting, have a 10-minute stand-up, something like that. Try to have less meetings because we want to meet, we want to communicate, but what we really want to do is the work. Don't cherry pick the projects. If you're creative and you're managing other creatives, don't take that plum thing and take it for yourself. Give your people chances to shine. Your job, if you're managing creatives, is to let them do their best work and let them take the spotlight. I was a new art director at an advertising agency in Louisville, Kentucky. It was called Creative Alliance. and I had badgered the creative director to give me a job. I was at a design firm on the other side of town. I said, please, please. For a year, I sent him stuff and ads and things like. Finally, he hires me. I'm like, oh, Christ, this is great. He gives me my first assignment. It's a print campaign for the Kentucky Department of Tourism. 4-color, money. It was a consumer campaign, so they had to do, some nice work for it. I was like, this is it. This is going to be so awesome. So I do the work, a couple of days. I get my thing. Day of the presentation, I come up and say, hey, David, man, check this out. And I show it to him. He looks at it. Dean, I can't show the client this. It was awful. It was a terrible, terrible looking campaign. I thought it was great. It was my first campaign, but it was awful. And I'd spent hours, days doing this. He said, I'll explain this to you later. I got to go to my office. He goes to his office. He shuts the door. He locks it. Less than 2 hours later, he comes out. He says, I want to show you this real quick because we got to have this mounted off to the client. He had this gorgeous campaign. He'd written it. He had concepted it. He had written it, and he had laid it out like 3 ads all in the span of 2 hours, like that. So let your staff know, your people, that they get the plum accounts. Let them have the opportunity. But they also need to know that if the things jump tracks, you can jump in with your superpowers and your mad skills and get things done. They need your respect. They deserve your respect if you know what you're doing. So now, I debated whether to put this in here, but I think it's a very real part of the business too, of any business, an unfortunate one. And at some point, you will need to let someone go. The adage of slow to hire, quick to fire, that's pretty much it. And you'll know when it's time for someone that needs to move on. They're unhappy, usually where they are at your place. And that's because with these personalities, time in a creative department or creative culture, it's like dog years. Things happen a lot faster. People are much more sensitive. They've got thinner skin, frankly. And things are exaggerated. When you have to do this, it's tough. You will really need to be sure this is what you want to do. And that's because performance in this industry is very hard to quantify. You're in sales, you don't hit your numbers, you're gone. With most other professions, it's like that. If you're a lawyer, don't hit your billable hours, you're gone. But creativity, that's the problem. There's no metric for creativity. That campaign won a ton of awards. Yes, but the client hated it. The client loved that campaign. Yes, but it was one of the worst we've ever produced. There's no right or wrong here, but it's just very, very tough to quantify this. But with those people, you'll have different personalities. Prima donna, I'll give them a second chance or a third chance. Talk to them, say, look, you need to grow up a little bit. You're very skilled, you're very talented, but we also need to make that work with the other people around you. And not like they orbit around you, but you have to work with them in the same space. On the other hand, you know this person too. You'll see it. And you will need to show this person the door. If you've spoken to them and they can't come around, because the culture, these personalities, because of the way we're wired, our sensitivity to things, our need to express ourselves, and our desire for good feedback, and we want people to love our stuff. These things are magnified hugely with this personality type. So, in managing your job, it's like parenting. You want to put yourself out of a job. You want to make your people so good that you can't afford them anymore. Ideally, you want your star designer someday to come to you and say, you know what, I've gotten this incredible offer from XYZ hot design firm downtown. I've got to take it. The work's going to be better. yes, the money's going to be more, but it's such a jump for me. And that's going to happen. But if you've nurtured them and made them as good as they can possibly be, this is an inevitability, especially in this business. It's very transient. People move around a lot, and that's natural. But make them as good as they can be, have them move on, be proud of them like you would sending a kid off to college, and they will remember you, and they will speak well of you, and that's all. That's all I got. So, thanks. Yes, then we can do a QA, yes.
Yeah, so you ever leave the door open for them to come back? If it's transient, you know that. It's part of your strategy to leave the door cracked, not closed.
Yes. It depends. Every situation is different. It's no different than any other business. If someone is left on good terms and they go over there and it turns out the grass isn't greener and they come back, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm a student graduating this May, and I've looked at a couple of agencies to apply to. What is the most effective thing from your viewpoint that I could do to make myself stand out from all the other applicants that will be applying?
Wow, that's a good one. There's a lot of different things you can do. I would say networking, but that's tough to do, to find those agency people who are actually making the decisions. I'll tell you what I did. Back when I was at a design firm, and I liked the work. It was good. It was a great place to work, good company, but I wanted to do that, and that was advertising. And back when the dinosaurs roamed, you were either a graphic designer or you were an art director in advertising. The two did not cross. These days, it's not even the titles are different, but the roles are largely the same in organizations. But then you were one or the other. So I was a graphic designer. So I started doing promotional stuff for me. 10 reasons to hire Dean Logan, and there were pictures with it and stuff like that. And every few weeks, like every 6 weeks, I sent him another piece. A new piece. I'd dream it up, I would write it, I would design it, I would print it out, mount it, whatever the hell it would be, and I would send it to him. And finally, after a year, he said, you know what, we got an opening. You're in. Having a good online portfolio is key. That's table stakes. Now you have to have that. Whether that's a Behance or something you build on Wix or Squarespace yourself, you have to do that. Having a perspective, I guess, would be interesting. And by perspective, I don't mean the the mission statement that people used to put on their resumes, goal to find a job that, lets me use my marketing skills and things like that. Those all sound the same. But I have seen some where they're just a little different. There's a little twist, and you really feel their personality come out in how they present themselves. One creative I can think of, his whole website and resume was done in a style of retro graphics. Okay, vintage. It was 50s style, and his website looked like a bowling alley from 1950, if you can picture that. But he had photography and the graphics. Every little detail of his website fed into this passion of his for vintage/retro graphics from the 50s. It got him the job. It got him noticed from other candidates, and it got him the job. So hope that helps. Yeah.
Internships.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Any student that has not done an internship, period.
That's excellent. Yeah.
What about getting your first internship, though? Because there's a lot of students that are trying to get foot in the door, and all they see is, I need 2 or 3 years experience to get an internship. I mean, that's, you two run agencies.
I'll take an intern without experience.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I won't hire somebody full-time without an internship straight out of college.
Yeah, that's a great point. Internships, paid or otherwise.
Somebody create an internship and get somebody to agree to it. It might not be one for credit, though.
I'm sorry, I have my headphones on.
Some internships are for credit, and they're through the school.
Right.
But other people can just create some and go get the experience and then not get paid for it.
It's a little bit harder now to for people to do internships without getting paid.
That has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you don't pay your interns now, kind of people are going to go,
Red flag for employers.
mm-hmm. But a way to get that internship, something personal, something to the person, the creative director, the hiring manager, whoever that is, a note, a letter. I've gotten all kinds of things from ray guns in custom boxes, but it needs to be more than an email. Something physical, and that's old school. And that's what I did, but it works. So if you've got something physical that's different and it's a package, and you deliver it to the agency, in person, or you mail it to them, that can make a big impact, as opposed to just an email. Yeah.
I was just going to add to that. Always ask people what their side project is. That's something I like to do. Be it writing on a blog or going to a networking event, volunteering. Ask people and be honest about it. What's your side project? What are you passionate about? That's helping me a lot of times here with the hiring process.
Mm-hmm.
If I can add to that too, there's a lot of, and it sounds cliche, but there's a lot of volunteer groups out there, and
TMC.
I'll
We have a blog, by the way.
a perfect example is dog rescue or welfare groups. These people need designers and creative people all the time, so even though they don't pay for that, you have a chance to. I mean, they would love somebody who can come in and design brochures or help with the dog wash or help with this was pet adoption day that we're having. All of these rescue groups, there's hundreds of them out there. 501(c)(3)s that or even that kind of help, social media help, any area of your specialty. If I see that on someone's resume, then I know that they're actively doing things. And if you're doing things, you're trying to figure out maybe, I want to do this brochure. I'm trying to put a software program so that I can produce this. So you're constantly learning and you're constantly creating and you're giving back. These are all very, very important things to do as an individual.
Yeah.
I had come from the New York market about 6 years ago, and you were talking earlier about jumping from agency to agency and how common that was. In that market, it certainly is the case. What I found down here is that there are fewer choices, certainly, in jumping around.
Mm-hmm.
You've got McKinney and Capstrat, and Baldwin is doing some wonderful things. I have found that creative directors, I guess when you get to a certain level, I feel like they're going to die in that job. And finding the ability, I'm working in-house now for the first time in my life as a creative director, which is kind of interesting in some ways. But coming from the agency world to that as, I'm not going to call it a compromise, but it certainly has been a change of life. But the ability to find those areas where you can just kind of like hop around is a little more confined.
Mm-hmm.
This area. Do you have any suggestions how to kill off creative directors who are
Well, that is a good summary of this market. You've got the big ones, and then you've got this whole slew of medium-sized shops, and then a lot of other smaller places. What I think's happened to this market is that there were big places like Rocket and Cativo and things like that, and they imploded. Yeah, I know Howard too. Yeah, and everyone like a dandelion. All these seeds sort of went out, and now there's all kinds of 2-3 person agencies in Raleigh and Durham. It's really cool to see. It's completely different than from when I moved here. But to that, yeah, that happens in this market because there's no place to go, right, as a CD. And I feel you, man. I'm 51, so I think that too. I think, could I go, hop into an agency now and be a CD? Maybe, but and as you know, it's a very youth-centric industry as well.
Yeah, it really is.
So.
From owning an agency where it didn't really matter. I have someone tell me at one point at a certain age, unless your name is on the door, then you might as well just get out of the industry.
Yeah, well, that's the conventional wisdom, but that's why part of the reason I started my own thing too. But and we can do more questions if you want. I'm on the usual places on the interwebs. This deck will be on SlideShare tomorrow morning. Just type in my name and it'll come up. Anything else? Any other?
One quick question.
Yeah.
Are there certifications that budding creatives, especially students, should go after? Things that would make you as a creative director go, I want to talk to you.
Very few. There are schools that if you've come from, the pedigree of those schools is pretty good. Creative Circus, Portfolio Center, VCU, I think. But other than that, there are no real certifications of things that, now yes, you can get certified in different things. Like you could be Adobe certified, which is great, but I'm going to look at your book. And whether you're certified or not, the caliber of your book will tell me whether I'm interested in pursuing, looking more at you as a hire.
So, but you could recommend the AIGA to as a professional organization to start networking and talking with other creatives.
Yes, AIGA is good. Triangle Marketing Club is one. AdFed is another one here. There's no shortage of groups here in the Triad that sort of have different niches. AIGA is more graphic design. Ad Club seems to be very agency oriented, and Marketing Club, this seems to be a very diverse mix of people.
Students, any other questions? I know you guys are from Greenville, not just to sit here. You have a CEO you can ask to.
What are the best ways to grow your portfolio as a student? Where should we go to find places to do things?
Two things you can do. You can do pro bono work for a nonprofit. Whoever brought that up, that's one way to do it. Or you can pick your own, like pick an imaginary client and do an imaginary project for them, like you would do in school. When you do that, if you do that, make sure it's something that relates to the real world. Don't do a print campaign, an outdoor, billboard thing for a tattoo parlor. Okay? Anyone in this business should be able to do one of those with their eyes closed, Do a campaign for a bank for to sell student checking, things like that. Look at real world scenarios, because most of that kind of cool stuff, the tattoo parlor thing, that may happen to you once or twice in your career, but 95% of what you'll be doing are, ads for banks and insurance companies and hospitals, or I say ads, websites and banners and brochures and things like that. So pick real world scenarios and do work for them, because that'll help. As a creative director, I will look at that and go, she understands that there is a business behind what we're doing here, and she's trying to solve a real world problem, not just doing some wacky creative. The wacky creative is great. Balance it with something that's mired in reality.
Dean, does a bias exist among ad agencies towards corporate designers? If the work is good, would they take corporate designers, or is there some type of bias? They don't understand the environment, blah, blah, blah.
My experience is that most agency people have not worked on an in-house team. They have not worked the corporate side of it. So yeah, there's sort of a certain arrogance, I think, there. Undeservedly, because it's just as hard to do good work in a corporate environment, if not harder, than it is in an agency. But I would say yes, there is a bias there.
How do these things get onto your desk other than from one of us?
Which things?
The book, the portfolio, the interested party.
How it's happened before is I will get something in the mail. The snail mail still works because you can mail cool stuff. And it's a nice letter and it's a resume, but what it's really directing me to is something maybe online. And if the piece that I get is well thought out and well executed, it's got to be well executed too, I'm going to go look at that person's site.
So you open your own mail?
I do. Yeah, I always did. I always did as a creative director. No one opened my mail. And so when some cool looking thing would come in, I would go, oh, this looks cool. Open it up. Oh, okay. and I'd stop what I was doing and I'd go check out the site. Now, would I pick up the phone and say, come work for me right away? No, but that person, if I like what I saw, they went on the short list, the really short list. Anyone? No? All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks to Chris and the Triangle Marketing Club. Thanks to our sponsors, IBM, for the beer. Appreciate that, right? Yeah, have a nice ice-cold beer. You ready for that?
Hey,
all right.
it's cold.
That's right. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.